Have you ever felt like your thoughts make you an outsider? Like the more you see the world clearly, the harder it is to relate to those around you? It's a strange paradox. The deeper your understanding, the more disconnected you feel. Conversations that once felt engaging now seem shallow. The topics that excite most people feel repetitive, predictable, even trivial. And when you try to bring up something profound, something that actually matters, you're met with blank stares, awkward silences, or a quick change of subject. It's not in your head. There's a reason deep thinkers often feel isolated, and it's not because they are broken. It's because society doesn't know what to do with them. Intelligence has always been a double-edged sword. It can elevate a person above the ordinary, but it can also make them an outsider. History is full of brilliant minds who were ridiculed, ignored, or even punished for thinking differently. Socrates, Galileo, Nietzsche, Tesla, names we now associate with genius, yet during their lifetimes, they were seen as threats, lunatics, or failures. Why? Why does society push away those who see the world differently? Why are deep thinkers often treated with suspicion, resentment, or outright hostility? The answer is uncomfortable but undeniable. Intelligence is a threat, not because it is dangerous in itself, but because it forces people to confront things they'd rather avoid. And most people, whether they realize it or not, would rather live comfortably in illusion than face the unsettling reality of truth. Think about it. When you meet someone who is physically stronger than you, it doesn't necessarily make you feel weak. It just means they are stronger. When you see someone who is rich, you might feel envy, but you don't take it as a personal attack. But when someone is intellectually superior, something changes. A deep thinker doesn't just introduce new ideas. They expose the limitations of those around them, and people don't like to feel limited. This is why intelligence isolates. The very nature of being highly intelligent means you will see things others don't, notice inconsistencies others ignore, and ask questions that most people never even consider. And instead of being rewarded for this insight, you are often met with resistance. Not because your ideas are wrong, but because they make people uncomfortable. Most people define themselves by what they know, what they believe, and how they see the world. Their sense of self is built around their ideas. And when a deep thinker comes along and challenges those ideas, it feels to them like a personal attack. This isn't about arrogance or intellectual superiority. It's about the psychology of identity. Intelligence doesn't just introduce new information, it forces a reassessment of what people thought was true. And that process is deeply unsettling. Imagine spending your whole life believing the sky is green. It's what your parents told you, what your teachers told you, what everyone around you has always said. And then one day someone comes along and says, "No, actually, the sky is blue." The rational response would be curiosity, to ask why, to seek proof. But that's not how most people react. Instead, they feel attacked. Their first instinct is to reject the idea, not because it's wrong, but because it threatens the foundation of what they believe. This is why intelligence is often seen as dangerous. It shakes the foundation of certainty. It forces people to question not just the world, but themselves. And most people would rather defend a comforting lie than accept an uncomfortable truth. Arthur Schopenhauer understood this better than anyone. He believed that intelligence was not a gift, but a burden. The more a person understands, the more they see the world for what it really is, and the more difficult it becomes to relate to those who don't. Schopenhauer argued that most people live their lives controlled by what he called the will, an unconscious force that drives them to seek pleasure, comfort, and survival above all else. To them, happiness is about satisfying immediate desires, maintaining stability, and avoiding discomfort. But deep thinkers don't function this way. They are not satisfied with illusion, with distraction, with the simple pursuit of pleasure. They crave truth, even if that truth is painful, even if it leads to isolation, even if it sets them apart from the majority. Instead of the will to live, they develop the will to truth, a relentless desire to understand the world, no matter the cost. This creates an unavoidable divide between deep thinkers and the rest of society. Where most people find meaning in routine pleasures, entertainment, status, material success, intellectuals often see these things as distractions from more important existential questions. Conversations that revolve around small talk, gossip, or social trends feel meaningless. The things that excite the majority often seem trivial. And over time, this disconnect becomes more and more apparent. It's not that intelligent people don't want to connect. In fact, many crave connection more than anything. But finding people who think on the same level, who are willing to engage in real discussion, who don't shy away from complexity, that is rare. This is why many deep thinkers feel alone even in a crowd. They can be surrounded by people, yet feel completely disconnected. Not because they are superior, but because their way of thinking is fundamentally different. And society does not accommodate difference easily. It is built on conformity, on shared beliefs, on a collective agreement about how things are and how they should be. Those who challenge this are seen as outsiders, as troublemakers, as threats. History is proof of this. The greatest minds were rarely embraced in their time. Their ideas were too disruptive, too ahead of what people were ready to accept. Only later, often long after they were gone, did the world recognize their brilliance. But this leaves a difficult question. If intelligence leads to isolation, what can deep thinkers do? Are they doomed to loneliness, to misunderstanding, to a lifetime of feeling like an outsider? Not necessarily. But navigating society as a deep thinker requires understanding the forces at play, knowing when to engage and when to hold back. Recognizing that not everyone is ready for deep conversations, and that's okay. Learning to find those rare individuals who share the same depth, rather than wasting energy on those who will never understand. And most importantly, remembering that just because society resists intelligence does not mean intelligence is worthless. In fact, it is precisely because deep thinkers see what others cannot that they are so necessary. Not everyone will understand, not everyone will accept it. But the world needs those who think deeply, who challenge the norm, who push humanity forward, even if it doesn't always appreciate them in the moment. So, if you've ever felt like your thoughts set you apart, if you've ever felt like the world around you doesn't quite match the depth of what you see, know this: you are not alone, and you are not wrong. You are simply seeing what others are not ready to. Yet, most people assume that intelligence is a blessing, a key to success, a tool for solving life's biggest problems. But what if it's not? What if intelligence, rather than bringing happiness, actually makes life harder? What if seeing the world clearly doesn't set you free, but isolates you? Arthur Schopenhauer, one of history's most brutally honest philosophers, believed exactly this. To him, intelligence wasn't a gift, but a curse. The smarter a person is, the harder it is for them to connect with society. The more they understand, the less they can ignore. The clearer they see reality, the harder it is to participate in its illusions. Most people don't live by logic or reason. They live by impulse, by instinct, by what Schopenhauer called the will, a blind, irrational force that drives human behavior. It's the will to seek comfort, pleasure, security. It's the will to chase status, money, relationships. Not because these things bring fulfillment, but because they provide distraction. They keep people occupied. They keep them from looking too deeply at the world, at themselves, at the terrifying reality of existence. But intelligence disrupts this. The deeper a person thinks, the harder it is to be satisfied with illusion. Where others find meaning in routine pleasures, entertainment, social validation, superficial success. Intellectuals see emptiness. Small talk feels meaningless. Materialism feels hollow. The things that keep most people content fail to satisfy the deep thinker because they see beyond them. And once you see beyond the illusion, it becomes impossible to unsee it. This is why highly intelligent people often struggle to relate to others. They are not above society. They are simply outside it. They exist on the edges, watching, analyzing, trying to understand. But deep down, they know they do not fit in. Because they are playing a different game, one most people don't even realize exists. And society, in turn, rejects them. Not actively, not always with hostility, but with indifference. Society is built for the majority, for those who conform, for those who seek pleasure over truth, and those who think too deeply, who ask too many questions, who refuse to accept comforting lies. These people disrupt the order of things. Think about it. When someone challenges a widely accepted belief, what happens? Do people listen with curiosity, eager to learn? Number. Most react defensively. They shut down, they attack, they dismiss. Because intelligence doesn't just introduce new ideas, it threatens old ones. And most people would rather defend their existing worldview than admit they were wrong. This is why intelligence, more than wealth, strength, or beauty, is seen as a threat. When someone is physically stronger, people admire them. When someone is rich, people envy them. But when someone is intellectually superior, people resist them. Because intelligence does not just exist, it challenges. It forces people to confront things they'd rather ignore. And that is deeply, deeply uncomfortable. And the brain is wired to avoid discomfort. Studies in neuroscience show that when people feel intellectually inferior, their brain's amygdala, the center for fear and threat detection, becomes highly active. In simple terms, deep thinking doesn't just intimidate, it triggers a primal survival response. The same circuits that activate when facing physical danger also light up when encountering a challenging idea. Why? Because for most of human history, survival didn't depend on being the smartest person in the room. It depended on belonging to the tribe, to be accepted, to conform. Those who challenged the tribe, who thought differently, who questioned authority, they were cast out. And in the past, being cast out meant death. This tribal instinct is still with us today. People don't just reject intelligence because they fear new ideas. They reject it because they fear social exclusion. Intelligence, by its very nature, isolates, and people instinctively avoid those who make them feel uncertain, who make them feel less sure of their beliefs, who make them feel vulnerable. And it's not just about individuals, it's about society as a whole. Society does not reward depth, it rewards certainty. It rewards confidence, even when that confidence is misplaced. Studies show that people trust those who speak with conviction, even if their ideas are wrong, more than those who speak with nuance. This is why charismatic, simplistic thinkers gain influence, while deep thinkers, who see both sides of an argument, who acknowledge complexity, struggle to be heard. History is full of examples. The most powerful leaders were not always the most intelligent. They were the ones who told people what they wanted to hear. The ones who reduced complex issues to simple, feel-good slogans. The ones who did not challenge, but reassured. And those who questioned, who exposed illusions, who refused to simplify reality. They were ignored, ridiculed, or destroyed. Galileo was condemned for revealing the truth about the universe. Nietzsche was dismissed as insane for challenging morality. Tesla was abandoned and died in poverty, despite revolutionizing modern technology. Society claims to value intelligence, but only when it is convenient. Only when it does not disrupt the status quo. And this resistance to intelligence is not just historical, It's happening right now. Look at the modern world. Who gets the most attention? Not the intellectuals, not the philosophers, but those who can simplify. Social media has amplified this problem. The most viral content is not the most thought-provoking, it's the most emotionally charged, the easiest to digest, the fastest to react to. Algorithms do not prioritize truth, they prioritize engagement. And nothing engages more than controversy, outrage, or entertainment. This is why deep thinkers struggle in today's world. Their ideas take time to process. They require effort to understand. And in a world that demands instant gratification, depth is at a disadvantage. But this isn't new. This is simply how society functions. People prefer comfort over truth. They prefer the familiar over the complex. They prefer certainty over ambiguity. And intelligence, real intelligence, forces people to rethink everything. So what does this mean? Does it mean intelligence is a curse? That deep thinkers are doomed to isolation? Not necessarily. But it does mean that deep thinkers must navigate the world carefully. Not everyone is ready for deep conversation. Not everyone wants to think critically. And trying to force people to see what they don't want to see will only lead to frustration and rejection. Instead, deep thinkers must learn to choose their audience wisely. Not everyone will understand, but some will. There are others who think deeply, others who see beyond the surface, others who feel the same disconnect from society. And finding these people, whether through books, through philosophy, through intellectual communities, is crucial. Because while society may not embrace deep thinkers, it desperately needs them. It is the deep thinkers who push humanity forward, who challenge old ideas, who expose illusions, who see what others cannot. And though their path is often lonely, though they are often misunderstood, their impact is undeniable. So if you have ever felt isolated because of your thoughts, if you have ever felt like you see things others don't, if you have ever felt like an outsider in a world that prefers illusion over truth, know this: you are not broken. You are not alone. You are simply seeing what others are not ready to see. Yet, most people believe they are intelligent. They believe they think rationally, that their opinions are based on logic, that they see the world as it truly is. But the uncomfortable truth is this: most people don't think deeply at all. They don't question their own assumptions. They don't analyze their beliefs. They don't seek knowledge beyond what is convenient or comforting. And yet, they are convinced they are right. This is not arrogance, it's human nature. The mind is designed to protect itself from uncertainty, from doubt, from anything that might challenge its established worldview. And this is exactly why intelligence is met with resistance. Because the moment a deep thinker enters the room, everything changes. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, a phenomenon in which people with low ability overestimate their competence, while those with high ability often underestimate themselves. The people who know the least are often the most confident. The people who know the most are often the most uncertain. And this creates friction. Those who understand little believe they understand a lot, and they become defensive when confronted with deeper thinking. Instead of listening, they argue. Instead of learning, they dismiss. Instead of considering the possibility that they might be wrong, they double down. The irony is that intelligence is not about certainty, it is about doubt. The more a person understands, the more they realize how much they don't know. The deeper they think, the more they see the complexity, the ambiguity, the contradictions in everything. But society does not reward uncertainty. Society rewards confidence, even when that confidence is unfounded. This is why simplistic thinkers gain influence, while deep thinkers struggle to be heard. In a world that craves certainty, the one who speaks with the most conviction, not the most intelligence, is often the one who is believed. Look at history. The most successful leaders were not always the most intelligent. They were the most persuasive. They told people what they wanted to hear. They simplified complex problems into easy answers. They reduced reality to black and white, to good and evil, to us and them. And the intellectuals, the philosophers, the deep thinkers, they were ignored, ridiculed, sometimes even persecuted, not because they were wrong, but because they refused to simplify the truth. This pattern isn't just historical. It's happening right now, on a scale larger than ever before. Social media has weaponized the rejection of deep thinking. It has created a world where quick, emotionally charged statements spread faster than thoughtful discussions, where outrage generates more engagement than reasoned debate, where the most viral content is not the most accurate, but the most sensational. Algorithms do not promote truth. They promote what keeps people clicking. And what keeps people clicking? Emotion, not depth, not logic, not complexity, but emotion. The more a post angers people, the more it spreads. The more it confirms their existing beliefs, the more they share it. The more it simplifies a complicated issue, the more likely people are to accept it. This is why nuance is dying. Intellectuals who try to explain both sides of an issue, who acknowledge uncertainty, who present balanced arguments, they do not go viral. Because in the digital world, balance is boring. Complexity is ignored. Thoughtfulness is drowned out by emotionally charged soundbites. This is why shallow thinkers thrive in today's society. The ones who confidently push simple narratives, who appeal to emotions, who tell people what they already want to hear, they gain the most followers, the most influence, the most power. Meanwhile, deep thinkers struggle to fit into a world that does not value depth. They watch as misinformation spreads faster than truth, as charismatic fools are praised while intellectuals are mocked, as critical thinking is replaced with tribalism, certainty, and blind belief. And the worst part? Most people don't even realize this is happening. They believe they are well informed because they consume information daily, but they are not thinking critically about the information they consume. They are trapped in echo chambers, where they are only exposed to ideas that reinforce their existing beliefs. They do not challenge themselves. They do not seek to understand opposing perspectives. They do not think deeply. And in this environment, the deep thinker is not just an outsider. They are a threat. They disrupt the comfortable illusions people have built for themselves. They introduce doubt where there was certainty. They ask questions when people only want answers. And for that, they are rejected. Not because they are wrong, but because they are right too soon. So what does this mean for deep thinkers? Does it mean they should stop questioning, stop seeking truth, stop thinking critically? Absolutely not. But it does mean they must understand the world they live in. They must realize that not everyone wants to think deeply, that not every conversation is worth having, that trying to wake people up who want to stay asleep is a waste of time. Instead, they must choose their audience wisely. Not everyone will understand, but some will. There are others who think deeply, others who see beyond the surface, others who feel the same disconnect from society. And finding these people, whether through books, through philosophy, through intellectual communities, is crucial. Because while society may not always embrace deep thinkers, it desperately needs them. It is the deep thinkers who push humanity forward, who challenge falsehoods, who expose illusions, who refuse to accept the easy answers, the comforting lies, the tribal thinking that keeps people stuck. They will never be the majority. They will always be misunderstood, but they are necessary. And if you are one of them, know this: you are not alone. Society may resist intelligence, but intelligence is what creates progress. It is what drives innovation. It is what separates humans from animals, civilization from chaos, truth from illusion. And in the end, truth always wins, even if it takes longer than it should. The world has never been kind to deep thinkers. If you look through history, you'll notice a disturbing pattern. Those who were ahead of their time were rarely recognized while they were alive. Their ideas were too disruptive, too unsettling, too different from what people were ready to accept. Socrates was condemned to death for questioning conventional wisdom. Galileo was placed under house arrest for proving the earth revolved around the sun. Nietzsche was dismissed as insane, only for his philosophy to reshape modern thought. Tesla died penniless, while others built empires using his stolen ideas. Alan Turing, the father of modern computing, was persecuted for his personal life rather than honored for his revolutionary genius. The greatest minds weren't celebrated in their time. They were feared. They were rejected. They were seen as dangerous, not because they were wrong, but because they were right too soon. And this raises a troubling question. If society has always resisted intelligence, if deep thinkers have always been pushed to the fringes, what does this mean for those who think deeply today? Does it mean they are doomed to isolation, to rejection, to a life of frustration as they watch the world ignore or misunderstand them? Not necessarily, but it does mean they must understand the forces working against them and learn how to navigate them wisely. Because the truth is, not every battle is worth fighting. Not every conversation is worth having. Not every person is ready to think deeply. And trying to force people to see what they are not ready to see will only lead to exhaustion and disappointment. Most people do not want to think critically. They do not want to challenge their beliefs. They do not want to question the structures that make up their reality. They want certainty, not complexity. They want comfort, not truth. This is why intelligence often leads to frustration. When a deep thinker introduces a challenging idea, they are not just presenting new information. They are forcing people to rethink everything they thought they knew. And that is terrifying. People defend their worldview as if their life depends on it, because in a way it does. Their beliefs are not just opinions, they are the foundation of their identity. And when someone threatens that foundation, they react emotionally, not rationally. This is why intellectuals are often dismissed, ridiculed, or ignored. It's not because they are wrong, it's because their ideas are too disruptive to be easily accepted. And this is where many deep thinkers make their first mistake. They believe that if they just explain things logically, people will understand. That if they provide enough evidence, people will change their minds. That if they argue with enough reason, they will be able to open people's eyes. But that's not how human psychology works. People do not change their minds because of logic. They change their minds because of emotion, experience, and social influence. And for most people, it is easier to reject new ideas than to reconsider their entire worldview. This is why intelligence, without understanding human nature, leads to isolation. It's not enough to be right. It's not enough to see clearly. If deep thinkers want to survive and thrive in society, they must learn how to navigate it strategically. And this begins with choosing the right audience. Not everyone is ready for deep thought. Not everyone wants to engage in intellectual conversations. Not everyone will appreciate the depth you bring to the world. And that's okay. A common mistake deep thinkers make is trying to engage with everyone, trying to force depth into every conversation, trying to get people to think about things they would rather avoid. But this only leads to frustration. Instead, they must learn to seek out the right people. The world is full of others who think deeply, who see beyond the surface, who crave meaningful conversations. They may be rare, but they exist. And finding them, whether through books, through philosophy, through intellectual communities, is the key to avoiding isolation. Because one deep conversation with the right person is worth more than 100 shallow conversations with people who don't want to understand. Another crucial skill is learning how to communicate depth in a way that people can digest. Einstein once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." And this is true. Complexity is necessary, but so is clarity. If deep thinkers want to make an impact, they must learn how to translate their thoughts into language that people can understand. They must learn how to bridge the gap between deep thinking and everyday conversation. This does not mean simplifying the truth. It means presenting it in a way that doesn't immediately trigger people's defenses. Because truth, no matter how profound, is useless if no one is willing to listen. And this leads to the final, and perhaps most important, realization. Not everyone needs to understand you. Deep thinkers often feel a need to be understood, to be accepted, to be recognized for the depth of their thoughts. But the reality is, most people will never fully understand them. And that's okay. Not being understood is not a failure. It is simply a sign that you see things others do not. And rather than trying to force people to understand, it is far more important to find peace in knowing that you are on your own unique path. The world may never fully appreciate deep thinkers. Society may always favor simplicity over complexity, emotion over logic, comfort over truth. But deep thinkers are necessary. It is they who push humanity forward. It is they who challenge falsehoods. It is they who create the ideas that, years or even centuries later, change the world. So if you have ever felt isolated because of your thoughts, if you have ever felt like you don't quite fit into the world around you, if you have ever been frustrated by the shallowness of everyday conversations, know this. You are not broken. You are not wrong. You are simply ahead of your time. And while society may not always embrace deep thinkers, history has proven one thing again and again. It is the deep thinkers who shape the future, even if they are not recognized in the present.